What's going on, everybody? My name is Aiden and welcome back to the NBA channel. Ladies and gentlemen, today I have a very important question to ask you guys, and it's relation to probably one of the most interesting and compelling teams to look at from the standpoint of the growth factor, and that is the San Antonio Spurs. What I want to ask you guys today, ladies and gentlemen, is where do you see San Antonio finishing in terms of this upcoming NBA season? Now, a lot of people have their expectations very high when it comes to San Antonio, thinking they're a shoo-in for the NBA playoffs. They're absolutely going to crush it this year, and no team is going to stop them. There are some that have a little bit of a reserved answer, saying, well, look, they finished 13th in the Western Conference last year. What makes you think they're going to get any better? The West has gotten better. Again, crying out loud, every year they get better. How can the Spurs answer that sort of talent continuing to come to the Western Conference? Or some people might have a little bit of a middle playing field saying, yeah, they'll get better, but how much better? I want to talk about it in this video because the Spurs are such an interesting team to me. But before we get any further, if you like the video and you want to see more from me, drop a like, drop a follow, and or subscribe if you are new, and let me know what you guys think about the Spurs and the likelihood that they could finish in a playoff position next season. Do you think it's a high chance? Do you think it's a low chance? Or do you think it's around the middle of the park, a 50-50 chance they could be in a playoff picture next season? I said they're one of the most interesting teams in the league. I'll tell you why I believe that. To me, they're kind of the Dark Knights in this NBA season. I don't think many people expect the Spurs or see them coming, but they could hit you like a ton of bricks next season and do it at a very quick rate. Now, you might be saying, what's changed from their team? Well, let me tell you the positives. The first one is the guy up there, gigantic Victor Wembanyama. The guy up there, bro, he's crazy. The guy's taller than my roof. It's insane. Maybe not, but still, like, that guy is a juggernaut. Defensively, easily one of the best centers in the league, and he doesn't have to try to do it. Offensively, I've never seen a guy like him in my life. I've never seen a guy that could take someone one-on-one at that capacity, at that level. I've never seen one-on-one that's doing half-court threes as a 7'4", 7'5" player. And then eventually, if he could figure out how to truly dominate in the paint every single night, like something Dwight Howard said is that he wants to see him dominate in the paint first and then move out to the three. You know, I think it's a bit of a balancing act more than anything. And when he finds that balance, I think the league is screwed. It's as simple as that. So Victor Wembanyama is obviously the first positive, but they had the Rookie of the Year in Stephon Castle. Did they not? Why is no one talking about him? I feel like it's the most quiet I've seen in relation to people talking about him. That guy's talented as hell, man. Like, let's not ignore him. He was very, very good for the San Antonio Spurs. That should be recognized. Something else, they got De'Aaron Fox. Has anyone talked about that? They got De'Aaron Fox. Now, you could say a lot of things about De'Aaron Fox. You could say that he's fallen off a little bit last season. You could say he's not the player he once was. I'll tell you what I think he is, the fastest player in the league. And I think that pick and roll and that pick and pop is going to be ridiculously hard to stop. You have the tallest player and the fastest player on the same team. Tell me who's going to stop that. You're going to have to give up something, ladies and gentlemen, and whether it's a corner three or one of the areas in the pick and roll where De'Aaron Fox can attack it or Wemby can attack it, that is a nightmare. I could see the Spurs running pick and rolls every single action, every single play, and they can win a game out of it. I'm very scared for the teams coming up against the San Antonio Spurs. But with that being said, not everything could be sunshines and rainbows. First and foremost, the team is still very young, and as a young team, it is hard to trust. Now, you just saw the OKC Thunder win a championship, but they are a ridiculously young team. So it's not to say that being young is always going to be a negative or a positive either way, but it does come with a little bit of trust issues. When you look at LeBron James, you can trust LeBron James to help you win games and take you to the playoffs more times than not. When you look at Kevin Durant, I know for the Phoenix Suns, he didn't make the playoffs this season, but you can trust Kevin Durant because of the embodiment of his career. It gains you that trust. When I look at Luka, I trust Luka, for example. When I look at Giannis, I trust Giannis. When I look at Wemby, I'm starting to trust him, but that might take a little bit more time for some than others. A young team isn't always going to be successful straight away. So that's the first thing you could give to the San Antonio Spurs. And outside of Wemby, they are not a great defensive team. And I don't think De'Aaron Fox makes them that good of a defensive team either. So I feel like where their areas are weak is going to be on the defensive end. I feel like there will be games and there will be specific times where they won't stop a thing. You know, a rim protector isn't going to stop a team from shooting threes galore on your head and you allowing it to happen. There were certain plays where the Spurs didn't even try to defend in certain games, and that cost them big time. So I feel like if their defensive work improves, it gives them a real shot to be a massive competitive team in this league. So all in all, with all that being said, all the information, all the statistics, all of the fears that, you know, that could come around when you're facing the San Antonio Spurs, where do I see them finishing? And what is going to be a good finish for them? Well, I'll give you my answer here. They finished 13th in the West. I think the bare minimum they need to get to is the play-in tournament. They absolutely have to get into the play-in tournament. If they finish 13th, 14th, or 15th again, I think not only will Spurs fans run out of patience, but I think all the moves they have made to get Wemby the help that he needs, in my opinion, is going to be for nothing. Now, luckily, Wemby's young enough you can rebuild around him again and again and again until it works. But ladies and gentlemen, that window for championship success is smaller than you think. So there has to be, in my opinion, improvements each and every single year. So play-in tournament is the bare minimum I expect from the San Antonio Spurs side. I think they could crawl over teams like Sacramento, and I think they could crawl over a couple of other teams that are going to fall to that play-in tournament spot. It's up to them to prove that, though. No one else is going to prove it for them. Teams like Phoenix and Sacramento, I think they'll be better than them. But they have to prove it. And that will put them in the play-in tournament spot right then and there. I think that's where they will finish as well, by the way. You know, I think that's the bare minimum, and I also think that's where they will finish. But I also think there's a very good chance that they surprise so many people and they get into the playoffs. I will never say they're going to be a top 4 finish yet. I will never say that they're going to be in a home court advantage situation, but I can see a world where that pick and roll and the team around them is so underrated that teams are not expecting it, and then they walk into it, get beat, and the Spurs make the playoffs. And then that's where things get really interesting. Because Wemby needs playoff experience. You know, he's entering his 3rd year of his career with the San Antonio Spurs. The first 2, he's had successful individual accolades, but he hasn't really had the playoff picture yet. I think that is the next step. If he could get playoff experience, then the years after this upcoming one is where you really should fear the Spurs. I fear them now, but you should fear them even more if Wemby gets a playoff experience on his side. So, to sum it up, I think play-in tournament, and I think they'll survive the play-in tournament as well, but I think that's where they are going to finish. If they could get to the playoffs from there, I'm so excited to see what that 4th year and just overall the Spurs team is looking like. There's too many young assets that can grow on that team. And the Spurs have always been a team that allows players to grow into their best selves. You know, I don't think Tony Parker becomes the player that he is unless he's playing for the Spurs. I don't think Manu Ginobili becomes the player that he is unless he's playing for the Spurs. I don't think Kawhi Leonard becomes the player that he is unless he's playing for the Spurs. You know what I mean? Like, those players became who they are because of that Spurs culture and system. They've always been good at creating key guys and creating superstars and allowing them to play their brands while also winning basketball games. That, in my opinion, is this Spurs team right now is exactly where they need to be for potential championship success in the next 2 years, 3 years even. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know. See you tomorrow. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay tuned for more. Take care, and peace.